As we know, in the Q3 earnings report, Tesla showed us that they are now hitting above 30% gross margins. Obviously, this is unprecedented in the auto industry. In fact, legacy autos barely make any margin and obviously have to save something for the car dealership. They generally make more profit on the financing and parts and servicing side of the business. As they say, whenever any industry gets old enough, the profits are pretty much gone. But without profits, it becomes harder to innovate. You're playing with scared money. It's more difficult to take risks or have funds left over to reinvest in the likes of R&D. You're less likely to take on experimental manufacturing techniques like, I don't know, perhaps the Giga Press. Tesla's massive profit margins are such an advantage, it is definitely not discussed enough. Even aside from the fact it just simply gives Tesla so much more profit to grow the company, along with extra incentive to grow and reinvest and more research and development, it also allows them so much more flexibility with their supply and demand. When it comes to ramping up, then Tesla will eventually find a sweet spot where there is the ultimate amount of profit between margin and demand. When Tesla finally have an abundance of batteries and their production lines have hit 10 times speed, then Tesla can create however much supply is necessary. If there's too much supply, then Tesla have their margins that they can reduce somewhat to then increase demand to further meet supply. There will eventually be a balance. This is really monopolistic behavior. Yes, you can tell Tesla is a monopoly in a lot of ways. Although they may not be by definition, Tesla do still have a lot of the behavioral characteristics of a monopoly and can get away with certain actions, as there is no competition. Competition is what stops monopolies. For example, Tesla could raise all their prices of their cars by a further $10,000, and you know what? I think Tesla will still struggle to make enough cars to meet demand. Actually, I think if a Model 3 was $10,000 more expensive, then it's still better value than the equivalent BMW 3 Series if you factor in the total cost of ownership. And that's when Tesla have 30% margins. Well, you've often heard me talk about Tesla hitting 40% margins too. I get some comments saying that it's ridiculous, this is a car, not an iPhone. Yes, I concur, it is hard to believe. But so is everything that this company has done to date. It's beyond impressive. We now have the quickest car in the world at a fraction of the cost of a Ferrari or Lamborghini, let alone the Bugatti, which is the closest in performance. Okay, sure, the Bugatti does have a higher top speed, but really, how often do you really need to go above 200 miles an hour? Not overly often. Fastest I've ever driven is just over 180, and that felt fast enough. Yes, it was on the autobahns. But as we know, 4680s are coming, along with structural battery packs, front and rear die casting, and new custom-built facilities that Tesla has learned from the biggest manufacturing nation on the planet. Added to that, now German engineers as well, that know a thing or two about building quality cars. Tesla is evolving their factories every time for more efficiency. Anyway, how about we do some math and see if we can work out what margin the Texas Model Y might actually reach. It will be an indicative approach using the best numbers we can find, but I still think it will be quite interesting and likely not too far from a possibility. Firstly, let's just work with the long-range Model Y. Although it's likely the performance version could have an even higher margin, I believe to start with this will be the best-selling Y from Texas. Alright, let's get started. Okay, obviously this 30.5% margin we saw in Q3 was all models and all factories combined, but I think we can imagine that the Model Y, what with having rear die-cast molds, probably fits in about there, especially for the long-range version. So we'll use that as the base margin. Except we're actually not really at 30.5%. I don't think this is a fair margin, as it's also including regulatory credits. When I remove regulatory credits, then it's actually only 29% margin. Sure, we might still get credits for a while longer, but they're already starting to dwindle quite a bit. With that, we can calculate the cost of the car, except we don't know the price, as Tesla have been raising their prices all year. So therefore, need to guess what the average price of the Model Y was when customers that ordered the car received it in Q3. Going back on that waiting list at the time, I think we are between $51,000 and $52,000. Therefore, I'm going to take an average of $51,500 as the price. With that, we have a production cost of just over $36,000 for the Model Y for the ones that were delivered in Q3. Now, obviously, the biggest difference in cost is likely going to be the 4680 batteries. As we know, the long-range Model Y is currently using the 2170 batteries. Kern Energy Research Advisors, a consulting firm specializing in electric vehicle battery research, says the cost of 2170 batteries is $158 per kilowatt hour. This was last year, so although I don't think we have seen any changes to the 2170 batteries, perhaps the price is now down to $150 per kilowatt hour. And I think it might have actually been Rob Maurer of Tesla Daily that calculated the 4680 batteries will be down to $56. I've also heard other credible sources say similar cost points too. To give you some idea, there has been this idea that once batteries can get down to the cost of 100 kilowatt hours, then EVs will be at parity with ICE cars. Of course, that doesn't mean they can make enough EVs to replace ICE cars. This gives us a cost saving of $7,000 for the batteries. That's potentially $7,000 more profit per every Model Y long range sold from Texas compared to Shanghai or Fremont. This is just the battery. Well, what about the structural battery pack? And now using the front die-cast molds too. I have to guess this, and I think I'm being conservative, but I think those could save $1,500 per vehicle. They are major manufacturing advances. If anyone has a better estimate, then let me know in the comments. I haven't heard anyone talk about the cost savings per vehicle on those before, although we know that the front and rear die-casts combined remove an impressive 600 or so robots from the production line, so it surely has to be a decent saving. Now, we've not factored in all the extra efficiencies we might expect to see from the Texas factory, and dare I suggest perhaps further cost savings in manufacturing since, say, the last factory Tesla opened almost a year ago. It's highly possible they may have learned a thing or two since then, along with more on-site vertical integration. On the other hand, we also have somewhat higher labour costs in Texas than we do in China, so perhaps they might level themselves out there. Okay, when we factor in our new cost of producing a Model Y and take the average price that we used, then we come in at 45% margin. Wow, that's even higher than I thought. 45% margin. I believe the iPhone is only 42% margin, except Teslas cost a lot more than iPhones do. Oh, but wait, we have had supply chain issues and the price of many commodities have risen, like steel, and we may see more inflation in this way. Therefore, I think we should factor in some of that too. I've added a further $1,500 on extra parts for this reason, to counteract the inflation Tesla may have seen, which still gives us 43% margin. Not too bad. Hang on, come to think about it, Tesla have actually compensated for this inflation now, haven't they? And they've actually raised prices as a result, except they've raised prices significantly higher than simply covering their additional costs. Tesla have raised prices to try and come closer to meeting their demand. As for our $51,500 price we estimated, well, believe it or not, the Model Y long range is currently for sale at $59,000 now, which is a $7,500 increase from back then, or nearly 15% more. Therefore, we should really be working out our margins at that price point, shouldn't we? Of course we should, as that is the price that it will be when people start ordering, when Texas is up and running. Well, that gives us an even 50% gross margin on the Model Y in Texas. I did not expect this. Yet at the same time, I think all this math checks out. And I know I can already predict the comments coming that I'm so wrong to think that Tesla can hit 50% margins. But before you write that comment, please show me the math that says otherwise. And I agree with you again, it's hard to believe, just like everything else this company does. Like the Plaid doing 0 to 60 under 2 seconds. It's still hard to believe, yet we witnessed it. And okay, perhaps you can adjust some of these numbers too accordingly. Maybe there is more inflation, maybe the 4680 batteries will take a couple of years until they're producing at that margin. But I'm only using the numbers that we have best at our disposal and trying to avoid making them up accordingly. Okay, if you've finished writing your comments, shall we proceed? Yep, we aren't finished yet. Okay, sure, there are options like the wheels, paint, extra seats. These all carry high margins. What about the software? The Model Y has an extra that you can upgrade the performance of your Model Y from 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds to 60 in 3.9 seconds. This costs $2,000. This is a huge jump in performance, and when you compare a European high-performance car that offers some special edition with an increase in acceleration, likely not as high as that, then they're usually looking at closer to $10,000 or more. Now, I don't know how many people do order this upgrade or find it necessary, and I admit I'm guessing, but let's say 25% of consumers order it. This is 100% profit. Therefore, we can add an additional $500 onto the price. 25% of $2,000 is $500. Now, if it makes you feel better, in that $500, we can also include all the extra margins we receive from upgrades like the paint and wheels. No, I haven't forgotten the other software upgrade either. Of course, I'm referring to FSD, except instead of $2,000, FSD is $10,000. Yes, some customers will also use the subscription model, but over the lifetime of the vehicle, that will end up costing more than $10,000 anyway, and we need to put a price on it. Again, software with 100% margin. But Tesla doesn't have full autonomy yet, so they've actually had to defer a large proportion of this revenue. What percentage, we don't know, but we would guess at perhaps 50%. We would hope that FSD actually does reach full autonomy within perhaps 2 years. Perhaps not to the level of robotaxis yet, but enough for private passengers, at least to a level where Tesla can realize 100% of the FSD revenue, along with it being so good that more customers want to have it anyway. Now, it would appear that the current take rate for FSD in the US for the Model Y is 20%. Now, FSD is actually already being included in our margins. However, it is being included in as the global take rate across all models, which is actually only 11%. And if we estimate that Tesla are using 50% deferred revenue, then our initial margin included 11% of 50% of $10,000 or $550. Now, instantly, we can add an additional $450 there to average it out for Model Y FSD take rate in the US. That brings us now to 51% margin. But what about in 2 years' time, when and if FSD is feature complete? Well, we can realize 100% revenue then, and perhaps adoption increases to 30%. That would mean each Model Y then has an additional price of an average of $3,300, i.e. 30% of $10,000. We're already factoring in $1,000 per vehicle, so we can add a further $2,300 per vehicle, taking us to 53% gross margin. Of course, in 2 years' time, we would expect even more advances, vertical integration, efficiencies, technologies, manufacturing techniques, added features, and reduced costs. But let's not be too greedy. Oh wait, we could be a fraction more greedy perhaps, as let's not also forget, all Tesla prices are possibly also going to be reduced $8,000 next year with a rebate. I'm guessing demand will be impacted by these discounts, and Tesla might have to make some more necessary price adjustments. Even if Tesla just raised their prices a further $2,000, then we are at a crazy 54%. And okay, it is possible Tesla won't be able to hold their prices up for a further 2 years until FSD is maybe feature complete, but who knows? I would say very likely with this rebate lasting 10 years, and more people discovering EVs and Tesla are obviously the future. Okay, now that was a bit of work. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do it all again using a standard range Model Y when Tesla have ramped up their own in-house LFP batteries. Now bear in mind, this is just Texas we're doing. Berlin margins might be different, and also remember these numbers are indicative only, but really, even if Tesla reached 40% margin, then that's good enough, for lack of a better word. Highly impressive is more apt, but if we're above 50%, then I don't really have the words to describe such an achievement, except to say, don't sell your shares if you don't have to, as this company looks like it might do pretty well. There could be other future events that affect margin, such as higher inflation. However, that would likely be counteracted by raising prices. The main thing that brings down prices is competition. Tesla really doesn't have any. I've been searching high and low. Then the other thing could be a recession, and perhaps Tesla will need to adjust their prices if fewer customers can afford new vehicles. But hey, they seem to have enough margin to do that, and I've done a video about how Tesla can weather a recession. Bear in mind, this is a video on how good Tesla's margin could be. I could equally have made one on how bad they could get if unknown events were to unfold. I'm doing this based on what we expect and hope to happen for the company. Also, just think how much harder it is to catch up, for lack of a better word, to a company that has this much extra profit that can be used in R&D and growth, compared to every other EV company that are losing money each quarter and have limited capital. It's not really percentage that is so important with margin either, but actual dollars of gross profit too. Calculate how much additional gross profit Texas brings in at 500,000 run rate, which we might expect by Q4 22. If we remove the extra FSD income, we're at $32,000 gross profit per vehicle. That is $16 billion additional auto gross profit. In other words, this factory alone will be producing as much gross profit as all factories combined in Q3, and Q3 includes regulatory credits, but at the same time, OPEX shouldn't have increased by much either, implying the vast majority of this would go to operating income, which in Q3 was $2 billion, annualized at $8 billion. In other words, it would triple. Might I remind you, like I said, that's a 500,000 run rate. I have an inkling that Texas might surpass that. Oh, and we didn't even touch on the Cybertrucks. Okay, what's the catch? Well, Tesla are going to be able to hide these margins for some time. For one, their margin will likely drop quite a bit on Q1 due to these new factories ramping up. Well, these are huge facilities to keep running whilst you're only producing a few thousand or so vehicles a month, at least to start with. They'll be produced at a loss. In fact, the stock price might even drop as a result. It might take some time to ramp up these production lines. Elon said it takes longer to ramp up than it does to build the factories in the first place. Therefore, we're not going to feel these margins for some time. Not only that, we only ever get overall margins of all models combined. the other factories wouldn't have the same advancements yet, so it will be averaged down, at least until we start to see Berlin and Texas fully ramped up and they become about 3/4 of all cars Tesla produce. Then it will be much harder to mask. Either way, I think we can all agree these margins blow our minds. Not only that, there is no competition. Competition means that you have to act accordingly and offer more competitive prices. Tesla's competition can't even make a profit at their own price points as it is. Tesla can keep these huge margins. Tesla's competition will actually be itself. As they finally ramp up production and produce more cars, they'll have to appeal to a wider consumer base, and prices will have to drop. But that doesn't even mean Tesla need to eat into margins. They just need to offer cars that are more affordable. Perhaps instead they offer less range and save costs by using their own in-house LFP batteries, which may not be necessary until 2023 or so, when Tesla are finally making them in volume production. Or Tesla could start a Model 3 line. Tesla showed on their website briefly that there will be a Model 3 line in Texas. Before quickly taking it down, they can just repeat all this again with the Model 3 and a 4680 structural battery pack front and rear die-cast Model 3 performance has got to be one seriously fun car to drive. On top of that, Tesla will be increasing the range and performance of their cars as their batteries get better and better and they produce better yields as the production improves over time too. Imagine the level of performance they could generate from these cars, just seeing what Tesla is still capable of with 18650 batteries in the Plaid. What are these going to be like? Like I say, these numbers are indicative, but I think promising either way. Of course, these are Tesla's high-performance 4680 batteries. What are the margins going to be when Tesla start producing their low-cost LFP batteries? The potential of this company has barely begun. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.